In this video, I want to talk a minute about your position or your form of government, which is called by some a situation. They shorten this down to situs, so situs. So one day, my husband inherited some property when his father passed away. And I was looking at the appraisal district website and just randomly clicking and trying to look at everything that's on there. And I noticed it had situs and then the address. And curious as I am, I started researching the word situs. And I realized that it was part of the word for situation. A situation is sort of like the form of government you've chosen to be in. Now, we did not exactly choose this form of government. It was really pushed upon us. And I'm going to use The Walking Dead, the recent shows, so this may have some spoilers in it for you. I watched the show a week ahead, so this has got season 11, episode 16. So you may be familiar with the show, and if not, I'll go into as little background as I can, but also helping you understand. So, The Walking Dead is a show about an apocalyptic world where most of the people have turned into zombies, or they call them walkers or empties, vessels, things like that. Just empty people mindlessly walking around, eating other people. Now, these survivors, the ones that didn't turn, they formed these different, I guess you could call them colonies or groups, communities, whatever. And one is called Alexandria, one is called Hilltop, one is called the Kingdom, and one is called Oceanside. And the people just sort of, whoever comes upon these communities, they just get to pick whichever community they want to live on based on their own personality and where they want to go and who they want their leader to be, because you have different leaders and different types of leaders in different types of communities. So they come, these communities, they've had their rough times, they've been attacked, they've had hard times, they've had famine, so on and so forth, just like any society in all of history. And they come across this one group of people, and these people are called the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth on the outside appear to be a pretty interesting group, but they use fake money from the old world, they call it, to bring forth the classes in their society. So you have the upper class and the lower class. So the Commonwealth wants the other communities. There's actually two leaders. One leader is a female named Pamela, and the other leader is a male named Lance. Now she's kind of okay, but he's like a real snake. So he's going around trying to get all these other communities, the Hilltop, Alexandria, Oceanside, the ones that are left, to join the Commonwealth, to join in this new modern society where they basically are growing opium so they can have medicine in the hospitals and doing all kind of bad stuff that most people don't see. So they're trying to get these other communities to join. One does, and the other two does not. Hilltop and Oceanside does not join. So he's pissed off about it because he's got an ego and he can't stand it. So he's trying to take out the leader of the Hilltop, because Oceanside will join if Hilltop joins, but Hilltop won't join because the female leader of that group, she already knows what's up. And the Commonwealth has a big army, and they're dressed sort of like the super soldiers in Star Wars. So what they do is they come in and by force they just take over these communities. Okay, and that's the point. You see the last episode of the last episode 1116, where you see the Commonwealth banners fall over the wall of Virginia and the wall of the hilltop, and then they go to Oceanside, where the people, they just don't really get involved in anything. They're being lined up and he's flipping a coin, and as the coin goes up, when it starts coming down, you see on one side the United States of America, and on the other side a head, the head of a person. So it's representative of what goes on in America. Most people don't like to get involved in politics and these shows and stuff, but because I'm a politically minded person, I see it all the time. So my point is that in America, that's exactly what has happened. The United States was limited to federal lands, and it was only, those federal lands were only the lands that the state, when it joined the Union, agreed for the United States to purchase and have power to make law on. And some states didn't even give up that entire power. So what the United States has done, because it has to act within the Constitution to some extent, I mean, how it alters the perception of the Constitution is has been done over a long period of time, but it has done that. It's altered the perception of what the Constitution is. So most people believe that the Constitution has always had all this power over all the states and can tell the states whatever they want it to do and all that stuff. But with even just a small amount of power comes a great amount of jealousy. And so the federal government was actually jealous of states' power. And this is something that has also happened throughout time. When you give someone a little bit of power, they want more and more and more and more. And so the federal government was actually given only a tiny bit of power, and even then was limited to just the federal lands, the seat of government, and the military posts. So over time, it has desired expansion and greater power, and that's what it's done. And it's done it by creating tools, okay? Tools to expand itself outside the Constitution, all the while because it wants to trick you, looking like it's within the Constitution, and it's not. So they created these instrumentalities, these tools. Instruments are instrumentalities, they're tools. And they're tools of the federal government. And these tools, one of them is to contract with people in the state, not on the federal lands. And they do that because they want to gain control of your property, you and all your property. This increases its power because when we live in the state and not on the federal lands, we have power over our state, and the state is supposed to have, being free, sovereign, and independent, have power over the federal government, even power over the federal lands. And the federal government knew since way back when that the states could leave the Union at any time. And in fact, that's what some of them tried to do during the Civil War. Now, I would just like to say that I am not a proponent of human slavery or human ownership. I don't believe that one human should own another human being. I believe in the natural law, which is what Thomas Jefferson said. And he said that all men are created equal. Okay, so if all men are created equal, you cannot own another man, even with his consent, because that's an unalienable right to have your independence, whether you like it or not, because that's according to nature. So what they do is they change the situation. They altered it. You signed all these contracts, you went to the bank and got loans, and as part of the loan, they required you to become part of the situs, the situation of the instrumentalities created by the federal government. So when they changed your situs, they changed your form of government. Okay, so I'm thinking, I wonder if when people get the appeals forms from the taxing authority in your county, that you could possibly, I wonder if you could possibly say that you're no longer wanting to be a part of the state of Texas, that you want to be a part, that you have moved now to you've changed your situs to Republic of Texas. Some people may laugh when I say that because they say, well, the Republic of Texas doesn't exist. It stopped existing when it joined the Union. And that's simply not true. The most recent Texas Jurisprudence Manual in the law library at every county courthouse, used by lawyers, attorneys, and judges, says under statehood that Republic of Texas, and I assume it's the same in every state, when it joined the Union, it did not give up its sovereign rights except for the things that it agreed to in the Constitution, which was to designate some lands to the federal government for building forts, allowing the federal government to purchase those lands, and then giving some jurisdiction to the federal government, which is power to make law, rules, and regulations to the federal government for doing work that the military needs to do. And that was the least of it. So some states said, you can just have all the power over those lands. We don't care. Just do what you have to do. And some states said, no, we're going to keep all the power over the lands except for those military things, specifically those military things that you need to do. And those military things that they need to do are in Article 1, Section 8, or Article 1 and Section 8. It's a list. If you look at it, it's a list. It's not a sentence and a sentence and a sentence and a sentence. It's a list, and all these things are the things that the federal government is telling the state that it needs to do on the federal lands as part of its military purpose. Okay, so there may be another way to change situs, which is by proper notice, and proper notice includes writing a letter, and you're not asking them anything, you're notifying them. So you're not asking them to respond, you're not telling them that you need to know how or any of this kind of stuff. I did email them and ask them for the process, acceptable process. Acceptable process, there may not be one, because they don't want there to be one, because they don't want you to leave, because if you leave, you're like in that movie with Keanu Reeves, The Day the Earth Stood Still, where he's an alien, he comes from outer space, and they hook him up to a lie detector, and the lie detector guy is asking questions. What is your name? Are you here for... And then Keanu Reeves, the alien, looks at him and says, I have to go now. And he was like, no, please, because he knew that when he unhooked himself, that he was going to die, that the lie detector guy was going to die. So without you being hooked to them, they die. It goes away because they need people to siphon off of. Without the siphoning, which is the SIP code, because the Z oftentimes sounds like an S, is a SIP, which is the same thing that the Holy Roman See did when it built cathedrals in all the cities. And I'm not against people who have religion or are Catholic or anything like that. I'm just using the Holy Roman See as an example. In the Bible, in Romans 14, it says, don't go out and seek vengeance for yourself. Ask the minister to do it for you. That way your mind can stay wholesome, and you can still go to heaven. But when you go to ask him to seek vengeance for you against someone who's done you wrong, give him a gold coin. It's a sip. It's a way to siphon. It's clearly meant to be that, a way to siphon from people. And we've been naive and gullible for way too long in letting the instrumentalities created by the federal government siphon using a zip code, okay? So I haven't done this yet myself, and if I had, I would tell you. The only thing I've done so far is I've emailed the governor of Texas, and I asked him, what's your process for changing the situ? I need to change the situ, the situs of my property. And I haven't heard back from him. And I appropriately emailed. I wasn't rude or obnoxious. I gave my information so they could contact me. And then, and then I received the appraisal district paperwork to appeal taxes, and it had a list of things on there, what I could do, how I could appeal them. And I was thinking of putting on there change situs to Republic of Texas. Okay, so like I said, in the American jurisprudence, the Republic of Texas still exists. And it says that in there. It's the most recent edition of American jurisprudence. The Republic of Texas still exists. It's still there. It didn't give up all of its sovereignty, all of its rights, all of its powers. It maintained everything except for what it gave to the federal government on the federal lands. Okay, and then for notice, to make a notice, you just write the notice. I'm changing my situs from here to here. And I'm not telling you what to do, because like I said, I haven't done this yet. I'm working on it. And you send it registered mail. You wait 30 days. If you get no response, you put it in the paper. I sent a notice, registered mail, didn't get a notice. You run that in the paper for so many days. And then you go and you take all that information together. You take a copy of the letter, the registered mail letter, the receipt you got for the registered mail, your newspaper clippings, and either you can just write it all down or you can copy it, okay? And then you go and you do a sworn affidavit. And then you can send it to the appraisal district, the governor, the mayor, whoever you want, saying you did this, it's done, okay? And I would go so far as maybe even doing a deed. A deed just means it's an act. You write an act out, and it says, all to whom these presents may come. You know, I did a notice. You could first say I requested proper procedure, didn't hear anything. I did a notice to change situs, didn't hear back. Registered receipt number, newspaper, this date, this time, this volume, or however they do the newspapers. Copy of the whatever, the newspapers and all the copies of everything. Did a sworn affidavit. And I don't know if you can file that anywhere nowadays, because a lot of people have tried to file things into the court of record and they just won't let you file anything. So perhaps that's changed since. But you can do that so that anytime they come back and they say, well, we're taxing you, then you have all this documentation to show that they have no authority to tax you because you already changed your situs. That you asked them and they didn't respond. So if they don't respond, that's their problem. They're not going to come to you now and say, well, you owe all these back taxes. But I also suggest, or in my mind, I think and feel like the truth would be that if one or two people here or there try to do this, it's not going to go well, because it's easy for a whole bunch of people to attack one or two people. But it's very difficult for even 100,000 of them to attack 1 million of us. Okay, so I just woke up thinking about some of this stuff, and I think sometimes the best thing to do is to get it out, because I hope sometimes that there's just someone out there who will talk about this stuff or know something about this stuff, or who has done this, and will maybe give some pointers in the comments section, or even just show some support and stating that, maybe, a bunch of us should get together and try that. So like, share, and subscribe, and I'll probably, well, you guys will probably see me later today or another video.